Hello everyone and welcome to another stream. I'm glad that you tuned in. It's pretty early in the morning for me still, managing to get up earlier and earlier. I hope that we can do quite a long live stream this time around. And we stopped yesterday right at the point where we would have some fun graphical work ahead. Let me quickly see how many people are already watching, how many people are in the chat. I started a bit earlier because, a bit later because I was still having breakfast. And rather than more eating in front of the camera, I just decided to start later. Here's my chat. Let me know if everything sounds fine, looks fine. And yeah, if you can see this, if you can see the chat and the text well. And then I will give a short introduction, as always, before we get started. Already 5 concurrent viewers, that's great. That is great. Yeah, feel free, like always in the first couple of minutes, if you have any questions that we could start with about really pretty much anything, post them in the chat. I will again start with coding and really go on for as long as I can, and then switch to some Q&A, either in the chat or with the Hangouts call if there's anyone up for that. And yeah, let's just see how far we can get. Hi there, Mason. I don't remember either Anvank nor Mason joining. Were you in one of the earlier live streams, or is this your first one? Just for me to be able to judge how far we are. Or sorry, at how much of an intro I need to give. Yeah, let's also try, like always, try to do the delay test. It's your first live stream, but patron for a couple months, I think. Thank you so much for your support. It really does mean a lot to me. I realized yesterday that I should probably pitch my Patreon during the live stream, because I will pitch it later. But basically, the point is that even a tiny bit of support on Patreon that you give to me monthly really can make a big difference when you take all the people together. And so I'm really happy about every single supporter. Thanks so much, Mike. Also really glad to have you back, Gary. Yeah, any first questions? What did you miss in yesterday's second stream? You can actually... What would your boss say, Mason, if you told him that? So Gary, I mean, I will gladly explain to you what we did yesterday, but just so you're aware of it, you can also go to the blog post about the hackathon, which I update after every stream, and here you can see a text summary of what we did. So yeah, before the stream I fixed the memory bug. We started to really make the gesture drawing work for the first time and fixed some obvious bugs with that. And then we're thinking about the next step, which is going from gestures to actually having a preview of roads being built and the kind of theoretical framework behind that. And that's where we stopped, because I got too tired, basically. And that's also where we will continue. Oh, interesting, very technical question. Is there a timeline for replacing Glium in Monet? I see you follow the code quite in depth. So the day before yesterday, I almost ended up rewriting the renderer, like just to make the architecture better. I kind of got stuck because the problem is really complicated, and I decided that it's a topic for more than just a single day, and I should really try in the next iteration to get the architecture right, to not run into stupid problems with that again in the future. So when I do that, that would probably be a good opportunity to investigate again, or not investigate. I mean, I'm quite sure that I want to move away from Glium as the underlying OpenGL library because it stopped being maintained, and GFX RS looks much more promising and flexible and modern. So when I re-architect the renderer anyways, I could switch to, that would probably be a good time to also do the switch to GFX RS. The cool thing about this GFX RS is, like a graphics library for Rust, is that it has several backends. So Citybound could potentially support both OpenGL as well as DirectX, and maybe even the fancy new thing, Vulkan. On Macs it could support Metal, all transparently, basically leading to maybe slightly better performance on some platforms, being slightly more at home on some platforms, and most likely working on more graphics cards than if I just used OpenGL like I'm doing now. So it's definitely something worthwhile. So we'll just see when I find the time for that. Maybe Anvang, do you have any experience with GFXRS? Did you ever use it? Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, I was talking with friends a couple days ago. I said it in an earlier stream already. That's what you get if you watch all my streams. You have to listen to the same stories again and again. So I was talking to my friends about that some of you already told me in earlier streams that you like to watch them on the side while you're working on something, even programming related yourself. And that I couldn't really understand that, because I feel like when I program, I really need to focus on that. And if there was like another topic going on that I also had to kind of follow, that would kind of kill me. Like sometimes with more difficult code, I can't even listen to music that has, like, let's say English or German lyrics, because it feels like it takes over part of the language center of my brain, which I apparently also use for programming, and then they're just in conflict. So I usually switch to instrumental only music then. So considering that, I couldn't really for myself imagine at all watching a programming related live stream. But hey, if it works for you, that's super cool. If you enjoy it, appreciate that. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, I mean, you'll definitely, I'll definitely try to announce when I start integrating GFX RS. I mean, that's an interesting first impression here about it. By the way, am I covering up the chat? Yeah, ever so slightly with my webcam. Okay, so you need to see this much. Cool, okay, I think it's time for me to give the short intro. Oh, interesting, okay. Let me give the quick intro to the people who didn't see any of the previous live streams. And for that, I will quickly mirror my iPad screen here. So you should be able to see this, right? The general idea is I'm re-implementing the planning user interface for roads and for zoning. I started to add zoning to the existing implementation of road planning, saw that it was really complicated and much more work than it needed to be. and that there were a lot of assumptions in the road planning code that turned out to be not true for zones. I wasn't really that happy with the road laying user interface at all. It's really complicated and unpredictable. But I realized that underlying everything that I've already hacked together so far, there's actually quite a simple theoretical framework. And if I express that more cleanly, not only would the road laying user interface get better, but it would also be much easier to implement the zoning interface, and you would easily get all kinds of extra bonus things that I always wanted to go for, like multiplayer real-time collaboration on plans. And yeah, that's why I'm doing that. The underlying ideas are very simple, because what you're doing in the new planning mode, you have these things here which I call gestures, which are these paths connected by dots. These paths connected by lines, which have these control points at every corner. And you can imagine that you can move these control points around, you can create several of these gestures, and these gestures have a meaning. So for example, these gestures that I drew here should become roads, and they have these small numbers attached to them which specify how many lanes there should be on either side of this line. What we then want to do is we want to generate a curved approximation of this line, which I drew in orange here, and then use that to draw our actual lanes, to find the intersections, and to create the geometry for all of that. So I hope that these 3 steps kind of make sense. Our current state of implementation is that we have this first part, we can click and create these gestures and move them around. And yesterday we just started doing this first step of generating some preview of structures to be created in the future based on these gestures. So yeah, and just for terminology, because you will see that in the code, a bunch of gestures we call a plan. There's what I call the master plan, that represents everything that has already been built in the city. So that contains all the gestures for like roads and zones that already exist. And then you can have several different proposals, which basically represent projects of which are also plans containing changes that you want to apply to the master plan in the future. And then we have something which is called a plan result, where I might still invent a better word for that, but for now let's keep it like this, which is actually what we have at the bottom here, a preview of the lanes and zones and stuff that would result from the currently drawn gestures. And each individual thing that is produced by that, so like each individual lane, each intersection, is what I call a prototype. So we're currently in the process of going from the initial gestures with their gesture intent, as I call it, containing the metadata of how many lanes to create, to actually create the lanes, find the intersections, and so on. We will do it in several steps. The first one is just to create basically just an orange line with sharp corners at the center of our line, so like code that does almost nothing, just copies the gesture and converts it to a lane following that with hard corners. Then we will implement the algorithm for a new, better algorithm than what we currently have in the game for smoothing out these straight lines into nice curvy lines. And then we'll add the code for just offsetting that by a bit to generate the correct number of lanes for each road. And finally we will, and this will most likely be the most complicated topic, copy over take the old code for finding intersections and adapt that and maybe simplify that a bit. That might turn out to be something quite involved, and I might decide to stop the stream there and to do that off stream. But let's just see how far we get. Hopefully this will be very visual and iterative, and yeah, people are already talking about compile times. Whenever I'm compiling code, or really at any point in time, feel free to ask questions, give comments, and I will happily react to them. Yeah, let's get started, shall we? So what we did is we started to add here our theoretical framework that I just described for representing the plan result with the prototypes, and this is already quite detailed. So we even have stuff for zones planned here, and a road prototype that the things that the road gestures produce are either lanes or intersections which contain lanes themselves. I'll actually add a comment here to do traffic light timings. That's also part of an intersection that we need to calculate. Oh, no, we actually represented that. Yeah, I got really sleepy yesterday there. So for now we have here this calculate result on plan, which takes all the gestures in the plan and produces a plan result containing all the prototypes that we should create. Like I said, our first step is just for each gesture we create a prototype lane that just follows it directly with hard corners first, and then something better. Welcome back, Obi Simmons, always glad to have you. So here we iterate through all gestures, and first we have to filter, of course, if our gesture intent is even a road. We don't care about zones here, we first just do roads. And if that is the case, we want to create a lane prototype, and now we have to create a path that specifies the lane prototype. So what do we need to do? We take the gesture points and we iterate over them in windows of size 2, because we always need to create the path, we always need to take 2 points in the gesture and connect them by a line segment, and that will create our path, right? So we actually need to make sure that if our gesture points length is bigger than or equal to 2, we need to have at least 2 points to actually have a line. Before that it's just a single point, and we don't want to create prototypes from that yet. If we have less, then we also return none, which means that we filter out this gesture, we don't do anything with it. So we have more than 2 points, so we can iterate over the points with windows of 2. We map that. That's just a point pair, and we return a segment line from point pair 0 to point pair 1. And yeah, that should already do that. Oops. Did I miss something? Oh, so here we have the lane prototypes, right? So we just return a new plan result with prototypes, and so we filter map this, we collect it, and yeah, for now we just have lane prototypes. Later we'll also have prototypes for zones, train tracks, walls, whatever have you. Everything that you can plan in a city will be created by the planning system. Oh yeah, by the way, I didn't ask for feedback. Any of the people who didn't watch the previous streams, did my explanation at the beginning make sense? And if not, where did I lose you? Where is there a gap in explanation? That would be really helpful to know for me. Collect here. Oh. So, okay, for now let's just expect this to be valid, and then we probably need to fix that in the future. Nope, still no, why not? Oh, we have to wrap this in cpath new. Just out of curiosity, let me know where you guys are from. I know that Dainless and I think also and Mank are both German, I assume, or German speaking at least. What about Mason? Obi, I know that you were Australian, right? Just for me to be able to judge. Okay, cool. Alright, cool. That's a really cool mix, actually. So the main demographic for this kind of time of live stream seems to be Germans at work. Oh yeah, I need to wrap this once more. This is getting quite elaborate here with types, but just so we have a road proto lane starting to look like Lisp. I feel like I should ask this question every stream. I just really appreciate seeing how many different nationalities are watching. It's really cool. Why is that a move? I guess that can be moved. You skipped university to join the live stream. You know, I'm not sure if I have a like overall good influence on people like watching at work, skipping university. I don't know how I should feel about that. Okay, so that seems to be correct now. So we can go ahead and actually render our prototype. Why? Oh yeah, we're not using the road. We are not using the information yet. How many lanes we have on each side, because we first just create one line centered on that. Oh, are you like in? Is it dead wintry still in New York now? Cool. So what we can do is actually add the rendering code for our prototype now. So basically, what we want to do is just draw a lane centered on, yeah, draw the lane that we just created. So where's my rendering code? Here. So for my prototype and preview gestures. No, and we actually need the okay, hold on. First we want ensure preview to actually return a reference to a plan and to a plan result. And then, yeah. Yeah, you're describing something interesting where I read that once in a Hacker News comment, and that like just perfectly described for myself why I like to listen to music while programming. Because it's almost as if there's like almost this one part of your brain which is just bored, which wants to do something else, which is fidgety, which wants to play, which will maybe distract you so much that it kicks you out of your work. But if you have something to keep that part kind of busy, and for this person, for me, that works really well with music. Yeah, this like childlike, distracted, happy part of your brain is busy paying attention to music while you can focus on the actual work. And I can totally understand how watching a live stream can work similarly to that. That's really cool, actually. Oh, is that current result preview? Is that how I called it? Okay, so here we don't really care about that. Here we actually need the result preview as well, which we now have. Now we can go ahead and start writing the rendering code for our prototypes. So I prototype in result preview prototypes iterate for now, enumerate. Okay, if our prototype is a prototype road and a road prototype lane and a lane prototype with a lane path. Oh, this is a complicated match statement, but this is what it is, I guess. If this matches prototype, then the line geometry is, and we reuse the code from here, only that we use a different width. Where do we find the lane width? Let's see. Okay, so we'll also need to introduce these two constants here somewhere. Not sure where they will go. That has to be somewhere in the old rendering code. Oh, it's just hard-coded. Great. So, how about we introduce constants for that? We can still move them later. So lane width is 6.0. Yeah, that's all that we need for now. So we create the band, nope, the lane with lane width, and then do something super ugly and stupid. Okay, which color do we want to draw that in? It's actually stroke base. Let's use that color. Okay, and then hopefully we should already be able to see that if we run the game now. This live stream is unfortunately not supported by Red Bull. If you want to support this project, consider becoming a patron on Patreon instead. Every small donation helps me a great deal, brings me a tiny step closer to working on this full-time as my day job, which would make me extremely happy and much more productive. Imagine if I could do a hackathon style project like this all the time. So yeah, if you have a tiny bit of spare money, go to patreon.com/citybound, right? Yeah. And consider a small donation. I would really appreciate it. I'm not quite diligent or happy with the rewards that I'm offering right now. I will try to invent cooler stuff in the future. I will of course continue to do the patrons calling live streams, where as a patron you can call in and have a long conversation with me, which will be live streamed. You will appear in the game as a citizen. That actually already works. Sometimes if you click on a building, you will notice that people live there have a weird name, and that's because they have been given the name of a patron on Patreon. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that there will be cooler stuff in the future. For now, if you support me, you can have the good feeling in your stomach that you're supporting a project that you like. And like I said, even something small makes a big difference for me, just because I get it monthly and it's something that I can like half rely on, which gives me so much peace of mind, and obviously also motivates me a lot. Nothing shows your appreciation more than that. Apart from that, of course, I also appreciate all of you tuning in, all of your kind words and comments and feedback. That is also really valuable for me. And yeah, love all of you. What's your current plan for monetization since it's open source? Well, I do Patreon, and the idea is that once it starts being an actual fun game for the average audience, I will do something which I saw some other indie games do, where I sell the game on Steam for a fixed price, but it's also available open source, which sounds kind of weird and schizophrenic. Like, why would people then pay for it if they can get it open source also? But the thing is, people really like Steam. They like to have the convenience of that, automatic updates, and they actually want to pay for something if they like it, and Steam offers them a convenient way where they don't even need to whip out the credit card, it's already on file. And I think that can work really well. That's pretty much my monetization plan for now. A more crazy idea for monetization, which I really want to try once the game works and is cool and is beautiful, is to have stuff like that you can, for example, order a high resolution panoramic poster of a city that you built. Stuff like that, like have integration with third-party printing services, and basically offer individual merchandise like of your city. Or imagine you could create like, you could in-game create like travel postcards for your city and then get them as actual postcards. Kind of stuff like that. I think there's lots of potential there. Or imagine you really, yeah, you could even have like your city as a small terrain model 3D printed. Yeah, there's lots of cool stuff to try. What's going on here? Okay. Let me know how all of that sounded for you, by the way. Okay, what's going on here? Don't need to add this to all patterns. Okay, cool. Then let's do it like this. So I think now that should be correct, and we should be able to run the game and see our first simple lane below the gesture that we draw. Let's... Oh, then we actually need to... Sorry, I forgot about that. We need to... No, that's fine actually. Sorry, no, everything is good. Let's build the game. This will probably again take like something like 100 seconds. So if you have any questions, comments in the meantime. Obviously for Patreon and monetization, something that's super interesting for me to know is if you've been kind of considering support, but you just really don't feel comfortable about it yet, or you feel like, yeah, you could imagine supporting it once it reaches a certain stage. What is that stage? Like, what are the things that are important to you? What would give you the confirmation maybe that this is really going somewhere and that it has enough potential for you to support it? If you consider that at all, just what are like concrete things that are important to you? That's obviously interesting for me. Let me see how many people we have watching also. 16, that's not bad for such an early time. I think, yeah, I still got the most views on my first stream on Sunday, where we were like 40 concurrent viewers, which is quite cool, quite a lot of people. And now I'm like kind of distributing the live streams over the day to make it easy for all kinds of different people to join in. Donald Jenkins asks how much of the code will be hard-coded. So ideally, as little as possible, right? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. I hope you get an impression of my kind of process with this, what we're doing now, since we're starting with some stuff hard-coded and then open it up more and more. Maybe a disclaimer that I need to give about hard coding and modability is that, you know, the way, okay, here we are. No, let me finish that thought quickly. The way most games implement modding is that they have a game engine, they write their game, and then they decide to open up certain parts to make them configurable, either using like config files or a scripting language, and modders can use that interface to create mods but this will always be limited to the assumptions or maybe even deliberate restrictions that the company does on the modding API, and if you want to do something that would go beyond that, you just can't. My plan with Citybound is a different one, since it's completely open source. What I want to do basically is for mods to be a fork of the full source code, and you can go in and change whatever you want. So you can completely change gameplay, style, rendering, whatever the hell you want. And then use Git, the version control software and collaboration tool that programmers use to merge basically changes of different people working on the same code base. We then just also use that for mods, and this should already give us a first approximation of, for example, hey, this mod changed something over here in the code, this mod changed something over here in the code, but since it's separate, most likely they will work together, and we can easily create the merged version of Citybound containing both of these mods, compile that, and have that, and then, okay, maybe they crash, and then these two mod maintainers need to resolve that, but I think for most of the time that would work quite well. At the same time, you get for free, like, seeing if a mod is still compatible with the newer version of the game. Did I change something in the game or the engine that causes an incompatibility in the mod? And yeah, since everything is open, everything is changeable, and there is already these great collaboration tools for programmers, why don't we just use that for modding and build a like nice user interface around that, for where you can basically combine mods into your own mod packages and then get a downloadable executable of Citybound for exactly this combination of mods. This is the plan that I'm going for, because it just offers the most flexibility, both for me as well as for modders. And I don't have to constantly think like, oh, do I want to expose this? Do I want to make this moddable? No, I just write the code as cleanly as possible, make the systems as flexible as I can in general, and then just everything is exposed and everything can be changed. Alright, cool. That's actually very nice of you to confirm my theory about that would work on Steam. Cool. So now we have the game running, and if we go into our new gesture planning mode and we draw a gesture, we see the second line, but it's very thin for some reason, and it's hovering. Oh, I just put that instead of using the lane width as the thickness of this line, I put it in the wrong place, and now it's instead of being 6 meters. Is that 6 meters? That sounds wrong. Okay, but instead of being 6 meters wide, yeah, I gave it a bit of leeway, so yeah, never mind. Instead of being 6 meters wide, now it's hovering 6 meters above the ground. But hey, that is an easy fix. Alright. What do they see? What do they say, and then where he's from? I don't know. What do you say in Baden-Württemberg? I guess he's already gone. Never mind. Thanks for joining in, Anvenk. I'll try to remember you for the graphics library related stuff that you were interested in that. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Okay, let's run it again. Yeah, and basically what I would enforce just through licensing is that all mods would also be open source. Basically making collaboration on mods through pull requests easier. Like you say, it would help with someone else picking up an abandoned mod and developing it further. And it serves as, like, every mod would serve as an example for how to implement mods, so people can learn more easily how to create mods, right? Okay, so now you can see that it creates this. but this is obviously not a beautiful road. So, okay, but we managed to do the first step. I will actually, let me see, I will flip the order in which I render these things around, because I want to the white line to be below the other two ones visually. Let's run it again. Yeah, I mean, I of course added an obstacle now for modding by using a not commonly used programming language yet, and one that can sometimes be quite tricky compared to like simple scripting languages. But my hope is again that maybe you don't even need to learn Rust, but I mean, I think the way that most programmers learn programming when they taught themselves, when they learned it naturally, is that they had either something open source available or they followed some tutorials where they take the code and they don't know what it does at all. They don't understand it, but they start to like, oh, there's a number. I wonder what happens if they change that. And then you run it again and you see what changed, and you, for the first time, get this amazing feeling that you influenced what some program is doing, and slowly you dig yourself into it and start to understand, oh, this is probably related to that, and you can kind of start looking up stuff and what that means. And I think especially for Citybound, since mods will be about very certain topics, it should be quite easy, at least for people, to find the place in code where that is implemented and try to just kind of read the implementation as English languages and start to experiment based on that and look up Rust specific things as they go. But I think a lot of simple changes should be doable for everyone. The tricky part is having the development environment set up, and hopefully there I will be able to provide a tutorial to make that as painless as possible. We got a crash in Gotta Be Valid. Why already now? That's kind of weird. Did I... wait. Oh. No, this should be 20. This... oh, I got confused. Here we wanted 18. Right? Yeah, maybe. Whatever, let's do 18, 19, and flip them around. Wait, Klaus, were you also the Docker evangelist yesterday? Good luck trying to run Citybound in a Docker container. Or you mean just for the development environment? But then you would need to cross-compile. Huh. No, I guess I could provide Docker containers. There is Docker for Windows. Does that already exist? Whoops, move this here out of the if. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If there's enough interest, people can actually create a classical modding API as a mod offering integration with scripting languages, and that can then even still coexist with direct native mods, right? That would be cool. Yeah, that would actually probably be interesting. Then again, I think setting up the development environment is not more difficult than installing Docker itself. Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure, the syntax takes a little bit to get used to, but the trickiest parts about Rust are really, uh, yeah, generics, like in any language, and complex types, as well as borrowing. That's like the main concept of Rust that you need to understand to get stuff working. Let's run the game again. "19 concurrent viewers." Someone's just watching in. Oh, someone is watching in 360p on their internet connected potato. I'm sure it's very easy for you to read all the code on on screen. I feel like somehow yesterday I had the setup better, where somehow the camera was closer to where the laptop is, so when I look down onto the screen it doesn't look like I'm looking completely down. Might have to experiment with that a little bit, but I'll leave it like this for now. How can that happen? We just added rendering code and switched stuff around. How can that now suddenly crash? Especially given that we didn't even create anything yet. So somewhere I really screwed up. This should be 20, then it should also be 20 here. Interestingly, that maybe even cost. Yeah, damn, the render is screwed up. I need to fix that soon. I have to say it's quite interesting to just immediately start the day with a stream. Basically got up, grabbed some breakfast, and started the stream. See if this looks like I want now. Yeah, we have the white lines underneath our gesture. Exactly like we wanted. So next up we will make this curvy, and for that I will actually draw again the kind of algorithm that I'm going to on my iPad, just so you know what I mean. So let me draw some examples again. Like right now we have this bunch of straight lines, right? And we want to approximate that nicely with curves. And the algorithm that I came up with is that what we want to do is we want to first, actually use a different color for that, find the center point on every line. So that would be here, roughly here, here, here. And then at every corner, so let's say we look at this corner here, we look at the two nearest center points, so this one and this one, and we ask which one is closer to the corner, well in this case this one, and then we copy that over, basically mirror that on the other side. Let me draw that here. So we take this one here, and at the same distance, maybe rather here, mirror that over. For the next corner we do the same. We have this center point and this center point. Which one is closer? Well, this one. So we copy that over here. We do the same for the next corner. This one is again closer, so we copy that over here. And what we do now to draw our curved approximation is we just start from the initial point, draw a straight line. Let me actually use a fatter line for that so you can see it better. Oops. Sorry. I have to draw this line again here. Okay, so now we draw our curved line through that. So we start straight, and then from this point to this point we draw a circular arc until here. We go straight again. Then we can again draw a circular arc here. Draw another circular arc there. And then continue straight until the end. And now we have a nice curved approximation of our line here that is both like really tries to cling to the straight parts as much as possible, but also creates some nice circular curves. I like this better than a standard Bezier curves because Bezier curves, for me personally, always end up looking ugly because they really have a weird curvature to them, whereas in real cities, roads tend to have much more circular arcs. Actually, real roads, and we talked about this before, usually use a combination of spirals and circular arcs. But for now we will be good enough with circular arcs. So let me know if that made sense, how I drew that, and we will try to express this in code and should hopefully see it quite quickly. Cool, thanks for letting me know. It's always a bit hard for me to judge which parts of explanations make sense and which don't. Because what if you want to make a 90-degree corner? Well, let's try to draw that case. Then let's just here create two 90-degree corners. Like this, for example, right? So you just draw the lines like this. What do you end up getting? I will do the center line process a bit quicker this time. So here, 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 we take the closer ones. So we end up with this. Then do the circular arc here, a straight segment, do the circular arc here, and have a straight segment, and then you have 90-degree curves. Is that what you meant? Okay, in a four-way intersection, like you don't really create intersections yourself, like the game will create the intersections for you, but I guess I get what you mean. What you mean is, what if you want to create a sharper 90-degree corner, and then using this system, what you can actually do is, if you just draw additional points, like let's say you do the same thing. I will only draw the first corner to illustrate it. What you can do is you could, for example, add additional points here that lay exactly on the line, but let me move this one a bit down. So you can actually draw a straight line through them. Like this, right? Because then what ends up happening, well, here are center points, but these are straight lines, so we don't need to add a curve there. And then if we draw the tiny center lines here, what ends up happening is that well, this here is all straight because it's straight, right? And then it goes until the center point here. It's a tiny circular arc there, and then goes straight off. So like this, you can make the corner sharper. Which different modes do you have in mind? Like ideally there would be as few modes as possible. What's not quite clear for me yet is how you would draw a circle with that, but I guess you could just actually draw a triangle of control points. Because what ends up happening is what ends up happening is if you draw an equilateral triangle, and the game could help you to do that by snapping, then if we just apply the same algorithm, mark the center lines, they happen to all be on top of each other if we copy them over, then we draw the circular arcs. We end up with a circular arc here, circular arc here, circular arc here, and we get a perfect circle, right? Yeah, the idea, this would only be for roads, but I thought that zones just always have sharp corners. Maybe they need to be able to have round corners when they follow roads. But yeah, I'll think about this. I mean, obviously we're flexible. So I think you got the point. Let me quickly go ahead and create a commit here. So added notion of plan result and prototype simple centered one lane prototypes. Commit that, and we can move on. Whoops, no. Sorry about that. So now we can write this algorithm, and this happens for now in our calculate result from the plan where we generate our lane prototypes. Right now we just took the points in our gesture and connected them with line segments. Now we want to do something smarter. Obviously all of this like special road related stuff will be moved to another file later. Now I just keep everything in one file to have everything in front of me, right? Yeah, that's, I mean, the control point idea is extremely similar to Bezier curves. It basically just uses a different smoothing algorithm, right? At the same time, I don't want to expose like the full vector UI with like the handles like in Photoshop or Illustrator. That obviously offers more control, but I think it's more confusing for the user and doesn't actually end up with roads that look like roads. That's why I'm going for the circular arcs thing. Okay, so in here we want to do something a bit more complicated. So how do we want to represent this? Basically, first we find the center points between, and the first time we just find the center points. Let me show you visually the exact algorithm that I will be implementing, because it's a tiny bit different in detail than what I just showed you. So we said that we have some lines, right? Actually draw that differently, like this. And we draw the center points. And then we copy over... Oh no, wait. No, never mind. We will actually try to do it just like I said. So... yeah, first we find the center points. Let's do it step by step. So we iterate over the gesture points in windows of 2. And we map the point pair to the point exactly in the middle of the 2 points, which we can express like this. Point pair 0 as vector plus point pair 1. I think that's divide that by 2, so we get the average point basically, and interpret that again as a point, and I will have to look up the algebra documentation for that. Yeah, the curvature, like we could have something like a minimum curvature, especially for rail. That's important, obviously. But for now, I'll just leave it open. Yeah, and we can maybe expose for each curve how rounded it should be. But for now, let's just do something simple that kind of works, and then we can always make it more complicated later. So let me quickly look something up here. What the hell? I'm not quite sure. I think I've been looking at the wrong version of an algebra documentation. Let me see which one we are actually using. 13.1. Okay, apparently that changed that significantly. So let's go here. Documentation. Alright, have a good one. Thanks for joining us. So, vector 2. I think I'm going crazy. So I'm just searching for something that I'm sure I already used. Maybe this will help me. Okay, let me try again. There has to be documentation about this. Let's actually go to the algebra homepage. I think I'm going insane. Oh, so this is from coordinates. And then here do we have from... Oh, I guess here maybe we have... two coordinates. Okay. So coordinates... So this actually makes sense. Okay, Jesus. What? Jesus, this library became so much more complicated since the last time I looked at it. This is something so simple and I'm going insane trying to write some simple vector code. Okay, so this works. Yeah, I'm kind of following your discussion on this side. I think the most obvious thing is that you will be able to move the control points. Right now we put them in a fixed position at the center and then choose the closer one, but if they could also be draggable, that that would give you more control, right? Oh, that's so. Oh. I can just do coords, guys. Sorry that took me so long, Jesus. Okay, we have the center points, so now we want to, looking again at our picture, what's the next step? Let me use again colors here. We find center points. I will actually draw them as turquoise dots. Next, for each line segment, we want to find 2 points which, and let me add something, make it a bit longer here so we have all the cases. We want to add 2 points that are derived from the center points. So what we want to do next is to find let's do it with the middle one, because then it becomes obvious. Let's look at the, oh shit, sorry. That always stops mirroring. Thank you for letting me know. Here we go, here we go. Alright, so I drew the center points again as turquoise dots. This is what we have now. The next step will be, I will draw that in pink, is to create 2 points on each line segment representing the end and the start of the actual curve. So what would that be? Let's first just look at the center line segment here. As I said, we take the closer center point and copy it over. So that would be this one here. We copy it over, we mirror it across the corner. So we would have 1 point here. Let me draw that better in pink. And we copy this one over, which would be here, right? No, sorry, more like here. Does that look accurate? Okay. Now, for the first line, okay, let's give them names. Let's call this one the end and this one the start. Because when we will draw our actual curve, the circular arc will end here, the next one will start here, right? And in between we need to add a straight line segment. And the idea is that for each line segment we have an endpoint and a start point, but they might be on top of each other. And in the case, let me actually add one more line segment here, so we really have all the cases. Sorry, because there's another special case in the case of the first and the last segment. So okay, let's first look at this small line segment over here, where, well, the start and the end are both at the center point actually, because for both of its corners the closer point is its own center point. So this is start and it's the end, since we will just have here actually 2 circular arcs. Damn it, I want 3. Can drive me crazy with something like that. Okay, here we will have 2 circular arcs directly touching with no line segment in between, because our start and end are at the same point. And then the last special case is for the first and the last line segment, where the start is actually here, or sorry, the end is here, and the start of the next curve is here, or in this case where the end is somewhere like here, and the start of the next curve, which we won't do, would be at there, right? So let me know if that makes sense. If we find these 2 pink points for each line segment, which are called end and start here, maybe you want to add an actual control point. I don't understand your point. You want to be able to send an image. Well, upload it to Imager and can you paste the link? Does that work? And then the line drawing algorithm will be very simple. We try to draw a curve until end, but here we don't have any yet, so we just start. We draw a straight line to start. We draw a circular arc to the next end. We draw a straight line to the next start. Circular arc to the next end. Then here we draw an infinitely small straight line, so none, because start and end are at the same point. Draw a circular arc, which I already started here, to the next end. We draw a straight line to the next start. Links are forbidden in chat. Holy shit. How do we do that? Okay. What we will do is you will send me the last part of Imager, just the ID, and I will paste it in, okay? Or you can send it on Twitter, that's also fine. Okay, so yeah, see, and this is exactly the point in time where I would love to just take a snapshot of this picture and put it into the code, because now I will have to try to awkwardly describe this with words, because otherwise start and end doesn't make any sense. For each straight line segments, we have first a point called end, marking the end of the circular arc, smoothing the beginning corner of this line segment, and then second a point called start, marking the beginning of the circular arc that smooths the end, the first corner, second corner of this line segment. Whatever. This is kind of stupid, but just put an Imager link in the code. Yeah, no, that's kind of not too nice to do. So we will call this our list of end starts. And for that, how do we get that? So what we actually do is we will now need the corner points and the center points. So we again take the gesture points in windows of 2, but then zip that together with our center points, and then we will map that, and what we get in our map is something like point pair and the center point. Oh, sorry. Need to... Did I really not see that? Yeah, it actually filtered that because it thinks it's spam. Thank you for the hint. So let's look at what Tom sent us. Yeah, I totally get your point, but how do you decide which part should be a curve and which part should be a line for a path that contains more than 4 points? This is the tricky bit. Yeah, I understand what you mean. But what would it do by default? Each segment is a line or an arc. And by default it creates no. I want something that creates beautiful curved roads just after clicking a couple times. That was the main motivation for doing it like this. Okay. What? Why did it add some shit? Okay, I understand what you mean. Yeah, but that's basically what I meant, that you expose these curve starts and ends as control points themselves. But that's something that I would do later. Okay, so this will start to be a bit tricky here. We need the point pair, but we kind of also need the next center point and the previous one, right? Skip the first gesture point. Yeah, but you still need to generate the correct stuff for that. So let me actually write that as a loop instead, and then I will think in the future how to express that as a functional map. So let end starts. Let me quickly look up exactly how NURBs look, and then I don't know a lot about them. But yeah, no, I would rather do circular segments. NURBS are like splines basically, right? Okay, so for let's see, I will try to express it correctly with indices. So for each line segment, so for again point pair in gesture points Windows 2, enumerate, we want to get what? We need the previous center point is something, the corner something, next center point something. Okay, actually first corner this center point, second corner next center point. These are the things which we need. We will think about how we get them, and then let end is if do we have an algebra distance? So if first corner minus previous center point just make the syntax correct here. Previous center point and norm is bigger than first corner minus this center point. Okay, no, okay. Shorter distance to first corner is actually the this and the minimum compared to this, right? Then let shorter distance to second corner is second corner minus this center point norm. We want the minimum compared to second corner minus next center point norm. And then the end is just first corner plus shorter distance to first corner. So actually our let's line direction is last is second corner minus first corner normalized. So first corner plus line direction times the shorter distance. Let's start is last corner minus line direction times shorter distance to the second corner. And then we return and start. So how do we get these points? Previous center point is, for each point pair we have a center point, so we do we do center points get I minus 1, which might not exist if we look at the first as it, sorry, just OB, that's only temporarily. After the live stream ends, you can only watch the last 2 hours until YouTube is done saving the video and transcoding it as a video to watch later, and then the stream is actually there in its full length. You can see if you go to my channel now that the stream from yesterday is actually the full 2 hours 16 minutes. So it's only immediately after the stream ends for maybe half an hour that you can only watch the last bit, since they're busy in the background re-encoding the whole live stream. So we don't need to cut it off. The only thing which again might happen is that my DSLR camera dies because it's running on battery and constantly streaming the video. I already ordered a power supply cable so I can keep it plugged in, and that should arrive tomorrow. Okay, so again, if we look at the first point pair, we obviously don't have a previous center point. So in this case, get will return none. And in this case, we want to replace it. So either it exists and we can unwrap the option, or if it doesn't exist, then we want to return as the previous center point actually the first corner. So as if the curve radius there was infinitely small, right? So first corner is actually just point pair 0. Second corner is point pair 1. Our center point is, well, just center points at I. This should definitely exist, because every point pair has exactly one center point. And then the next center point, again, we want to be careful and use get I plus 1, which might again be none. And if it's none, we want that to be the second corner. Again, imagining having an infinitely small curve at the end there. Okay, yeah, that felt easier to express than with a map still. Okay, so end starts, we push this pair of end and start, and then we can actually go ahead and let segments is end starts flat map, because for each end start pair we want to potentially create, let me think, we want to create 2. Yeah, we want to create 2 segments, like the circular arc coming in straight line segment. Let's do it like that. Flat map and start. And then actually, let me think. I guess we actually want to Um, Again, I will write it as a for loop. I'm not that, for some reason I have problems thinking functionally today. For and start in and starts. We will have a, we will have a previous point, which initially is just a first point, and we draw incoming arc, segments, arc with direction. Oh, we also have to. No, that makes sense though. Is gesture points 1 points. I will probably clean this up, but for now let's just try to get it work. 0 normalize. So we draw an arc from the previous point with the previous direction to our end. Now, since these 2 points might be infinitely close together, that might not actually be a valid arc. So in that case we get none and we don't add any segment. But if we get a valid incoming arc, let's call it like that, then we push that as an incoming arc. And then if let some valid connecting line, and then we try to create a line segment, line from end to the next curve start. And if that's valid, so if it's not infinitely small, then we also push that. And then we have to think about, so now in our picture, let me share that again. Here we go. In our picture, let's say we were here, we drew this curved line, and that was valid. We drew the straight line, and now we need to set the previous starting point for the next curve to the start point And then how do we get the correct, okay, this is easy, previous point is start. But what about the direction? So we can get the direction. Let's look at the different cases. For example, here we don't have an incoming curve, but we have a straight line that's valid connecting. No, we actually need to remember the directions. That will be the easiest. So Also, we remember the direction of the line segment, because end and start might be infinitely close together, and then we don't actually know which direction the underlying gesture had. So we call it end start directions. And there we actually put the line direction. Then for end start direction in end start directions, previous direction is direction, and that should do the trick. So now we have our segments, and now we should be able to just put them into the path of our lane prototype here and hopefully get something valid. The fact that that all just reformatted is a good sign, because it means that it's valid code. And okay, what is the problem here? And then I think that should already work. Exciting stuff. Okay, that is correct code at least. Doesn't show any errors here, so let's build the game and see if we get curved roads like we wanted. How are you guys doing? I can use the compile time to tell something that I already told in the last stream yesterday. I had an idea that why don't we take one of these days of the hackathon as an actual day off, but I also live stream, and I live stream let's plays of other city building games or related games, and we kind of try to both do kind of classical let's play but also really inspect the gameplay, see what we can learn, see what we can criticize. I think that would be a lot of fun. Let me know what you think about it. I was thinking at least City Skylines, since I never played that myself. I only watched quite a lot of Let's Plays, but I never played it myself. Love to show A-Train, maybe Roller Coaster Tycoon, see what we can get away from that. And also I just want to try out this doing a Let's Play myself for fun, because I really enjoy watching other Let's Players. There's really good ones out there, and I think I would enjoy it from the other perspective as well. If you have suggestions for other games to try, of course, let me know. Okay, here's the exciting moment. Oh, look at that, it works. First try. Perfect. Can move this around. Oh, this is so nice. Can't imagine how happy I am to see this. Look at it. Look at what we created. Oh, that feels so nice. Yeah, I'm really happy with that actually. Just worked on first try, we got it correct. Do you know how rare that is? Sweet. Yeah, it also happens rarely for me. But I think we were very rigorous and made sure along the way that we got all the details right. What about adding new points now? What do you mean with that? Like adding additional points in an existing line? You can't believe how happy I'm about this. Adding points to an existing line. Okay, do you want to take some time and implement that before we continue? Yeah, how about, how long have we been going on? For 2 hours roughly. How about we add the UI for adding additional points and also removing existing points? And then we wrap up the stream there. I can take some time in between to work on the intersection code, and then I can do another live stream again in the night. So let's think here. I have to run it again and play around because it's just so nice. So let's start with the simpler thing first of deleting existing points to simplify the curve. I feel like the intuitive thing there would be to double click a point and it will go away. Does that make sense? Or how should we delete points? So the thing about double clicks is we need to somehow have a timer, right? I mean, so far I have double clicks when I finish a gesture, but that just means that, okay, I created the new point and then I click once on the newly created point and that finishes it. Yeah, I would like to avoid combining mouse and keyboard for that. Or, I mean, how about, yeah, we will have selection of individual points later on. How about for now, I mean, the obvious point to, or let me know if that's an obvious way. The obvious way to delete a point is just to move it super close to the next point, right? Probably I can make the game crash if I do that. No? Oh, not too bad. So one way to delete a point would just be to move it super close to the previous point, right? Let me know if that feels like something that you would intuitively do or discover. That's not intuitive. Select and delete or right click. Okay. So we will need the concept of selecting points, right? I mean, it would be nice in general to be able to select several points and move around several points, right? Like uniformly. So I guess we need to add the notion of selecting, yeah, selecting any amount of control points. Okay, cool, yeah, we definitely will want a marquee tool to select an area of points. Okay, so let's do a commit. Implement smoothing algorithm. Here we go. And then we want to change a bit how everything works. So in our Plan Manager UI state, we need to remember selected points, which is a vector of basically that's control point reference consists of a gesture ID and the index of the point, right? So here we have our selected points as a bunch of control point refs, and then we need to have message handlers for our Plan Manager at selected point with control point reference. Let's put that somewhere else. Yeah, let's do that here. At selected point. For for machine ID. So self UI state get mutable for machine ID expect should already have UI state. And then we do UI state, selected points, and push our point reference. That's that. We need a second message handler, clear selections, or just clear selection for a particular machine ID. The machine ID represents like one particular multiplayer player. So again, same, and we just clear that. And every time we do that, we actually want to, I guess, do let me actually recreate control point interactables on machine. Then we split that up. We do all of this here. That should compile. Give me a moment. Okay. And then, okay, when we add a selected point, we want to do self recreate control point interactables on just one machine, which is our machine ID. Yeah, the memory thing was worked out. Again, if you're curious what happened in live streams that you missed, go to the dev blog and go to the post about hackathons, and I will write a short text summary of what happened in each stream at some point after the stream is complete, alright? We do the same here. Now let's start to add the actual interaction for selecting points. So when we click on a point, we add it to the list of selected points, and we also want to render it differently. Let's, for example, just increase the thickness of the circular border that it has. So let's do the selection. For now, let's okay, let's actually call this slightly differently. We want to have toggle point selected, and then if UI state selected points, because we want to be able to add and remove the point to the selection, I guess. No, let's keep it simple for now. We can just add to our selection or completely clear it. Let's do it like this for now, just to keep things simple. So in our control point interactable, when we finish a drag, like that's when we move a point around, right? If the drag is very short, then it's a click. My UI library doesn't really distinguish between clicks and drags. A click is just a drag where you didn't move the mouse at all. I hope that makes sense. So if our drag is finished, then we also want to add our point as a selected point. Self dot gesture id self point index. And what else do we need? Machine ID. Self ID asro machine. Right. And then in a bit we will distinguish between if you're holding shift or not. But for now we just always add whatever point we click to the selection. And if we click somewhere else, so on the gesture canvas, we want to actually clear the selection before we can draw a new gesture. Okay, so let me think. Let me think. Okay, in the rendering code, yeah, let's change the rendering code. So for the, let's actually just change the color of the control point. So we will introduce a new color for a selected control point. Just for clarity, let's make it bright red for now, and then we can come up with something more beautiful later. So if self wait, where's that? that's not too beautiful. I will clean that up. So let selected points if selected points, then I think includes contains, yeah. Slice contains control point we will need the gesture ID in addition to the gesture. Enumerate map point index point gesture ID point index. So if our point is in the selected points, then we wanted to use the color for control point selected. Else the color for control point. Did that work? Let's see. Let's try to fix all the problems here. Here we, at this point, we really already need to have selected a proposal to look at. Just fixing the last bugs before we get the first rudimentary version of selecting control points. Okay, what? guess like this. That do the trick? Yeah. Okay, let's see if it works. Let's compile. Let's see how many people we have watching. No, not that window, not that window either. Still 18 concurrent viewers, that's pretty damn cool. Ugh, the wait. Okay, let's see here. And by finishing the gesture, I already selected the last point. Should be able to select other points as well. Yeah, exactly. There's still the bug that I moved them around accidentally a bit. So we can select them and see which ones are selected. Yeah, I should do one thing, which is that when I add a selected point, I only do that if not UI state selected points contains so we only have it in there once and not multiple times. So what do we need then? We want to be able to delete them, we said, and the idea was that we select them and we hit, well, for example, backspace or delete. So for that, okay, let me think. Yeah, multiple selected points should move together, I thought. Yeah, but we didn't implement that yet. We can actually implement that one first. So let me think. Actually, to be honest, I'm noticing that I'm really losing concentration. I would suggest that we wrap up this stream I get a bit of rest. I've been getting up earlier and earlier, so I'm not sleeping a lot each night. And I will do another live stream probably in the afternoon. Yeah, I will announce that. And we can let's just do a bit of Q&A now. If you have any questions about anything, either what we've been doing today or about Citybound in general, feel free to ask. If there is anyone with a microphone and some free time and some topics or questions, I would be, as always, more than happy to have a voice chat with you and to talk to you in person. That's always really personal and nice. Yeah, but apart from that, just put questions in the chat. I always like this rule. Let's say I will answer 4 questions that you guys have, and then I will wrap up the stream, okay? So here's the challenge for you to ask these questions. I mean, yeah, in the meantime, let me just run the game again and play around with that a bit. I have to say that it's like the curves look better and work better than I even expected in my head, which makes me really happy. Do you plan to implement snapping for road zone drawing? Yes, obviously. And that is something that should be quite easy to do on top of the simple gesture system. Okay, 3 questions left. That was a simple one. Sorry if I missed it, but what happens if you want a sharp corner? Do you just drag the points a la pen tool? In a way, yeah. If you want a sharp corner, we did that earlier. What you can do is I'll just demonstrate that here. You create a straight line and then you add another point that basically continues the straight line. I didn't do that perfectly now, but with snapping you would get it right. You again add a second point very close, and then you can draw the second one further away, and you see we get a nice sharp corner here. We can obviously adjust the radius by dragging these two further away, right? That's how it works. You can also smooth it out by doing this. Yeah, I think you get the idea, right? The neat thing about this is that you can really just look at these straight lines and do a perfect 90-degree angle here, and the curve will do its job to approximate that nicely, right? And it's quite easy to create all kinds of realistic looking 90-degree corner shapes with this system. And end up, yeah, I mean, this looks pretty nice, right? Can you add a point in between existing ones? Not yet. For that we will have to add a new kind of interactable, which is basically on the connecting line that reacts to clicks and adds a new point in between there, but that is very easy to do. Okay, 2 more questions left before we wrap it up. Or if there's no more questions, let us wrap up the stream right here. Stay tuned for the second stream later today. I'm not quite sure yet when I will do that. It depends a bit of how much work and which work I will do off stream. Damn it, Dimitri, don't miss the streams every time. Yeah, I just earlier mentioned again the idea of the Let's Play stream, that I want to do that, but I will obviously announce that in a dedicated post on Reddit and on Twitter. Your questions are always about things in the long term. Well, if you have one particular one that you're interested in right now, feel free to write it and it can be our last question. And Dimitri, you are Hitsu on Reddit, right? Alright. Well, you saw my response and I actually just got the notification, so let me quickly read what you replied. Yeah, I mean so to give you context, Dimitri aka Hitsu is actually suggesting on Reddit to implement the terrain in like flat layers, kind of like in architectural models where you have this kind of, oh, there's so many responses. Let's see, architectural model, terrain layers, images. Yeah, exactly. You know, where in architectural models they model terrain with these like flat layers, and god damn it, Pinterest. Okay, I mean you see it here, right? And Dimitri aka Hitsu is basically suggesting to do terrain in Citybound like this. It has many advantages, like that buildings are always, like, it makes it very easy to have things, have very three-dimensional cities while still having clear-cut corners. The way roads interact with it is very obvious, the way buildings interact is very obvious, the way to do bridges on different heights, tunnels, everything becomes very easy. And I have to say that the idea is very interesting to use maybe as something underlying. But I don't like the visual style. I would like the terrain to look more realistic. And I'm not sure if I want to have the discrete steps necessarily in the gameplay logic or the way buildings look either. That being said, the main motivation for Dimitri Hitsu to suggest is that height maps are very limiting, they cause problems, they look ugly, you can't have overhangs, you can't have sharp corners or walls. I want to go for something which is basically, which will be height map on steroids, which will ideally allow for nice interaction of roads arbitrarily shaped with the terrain, nice interaction of building foundations with the terrain, that you can have sharp walls and sharp, yeah, again, arbitrarily shaped sharp walls in the terrain, and maybe even a way to do overhangs, even if it's just like a graphical gimmick in like particularly rocky places. Jesse Mellon just joined. Hi there. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the question. I don't think I want to have these discrete steps, but I want to I have some half-baked ideas on how you can combine height maps, randomly generated height maps, as like the natural base for the terrain, and then have that interact with 3D polygonal shapes like roads or building foundations, and kind of interpolate between the height map and these things which have sharp corners, which can also be walls. And basically you just have to render that right, and render a mesh that covers both the kind of smoothish, random, classical height map terrain, as well as these really sharp features such as roads and building foundations. I hope that makes sense. Okay, let me answer. Donald Jenkins asked about services and how they would function. The way you add services to the city is also using zoning, that you reserve a shape for a school, for example, or a fire department, and then the second part to that is how much budget you give them, and based on the combination of these, how much room you give them and how much budget you give them, they kind of procedurally self-generate in there and try their best to use your money to offer the service to the surrounding city. And then it's just a classical thing where children will try to travel to the nearest school to get education there. You have hospitals where people go when they're sick and which can send out ambulances. You have police and fire department and all that stuff. But the way you interact with it is this combination of dedicating some areas as special like city zones to them, and by the amount of budget that you give them. Well, David Atkinson, I don't think that you're truly... Is that your real name? Like, are you called like the nature documentary guy, or is that just your nickname? Anyways, I really appreciate that you've been following it and watching. Really glad to have you as a fan, of course. What's my plan on implementing elevated roads? Yeah, exactly, something like selecting the point and then using either page up, page down, or some, I don't know, some control that makes sense to lift them up or down relative to the ground. That's exactly how that would work. Basically, the gestures just become 3D points instead of just 2D points. Oh yeah, that's right. Sorry about that. Close enough, I guess. So David Atkinson, I assume that's your actual name then. Thanks so much for the kind words. You missed the episode. Can we later change the radius of turns on the nodes? What I tried to show here is that you can kind of influence it. Let me actually draw a new one. If you draw a straight line and then you draw a tiny point that continues the line, a tiny point here, and then another straight line, you can see that it creates a very small curve radius. Whereas if sorry, never mind that. Whereas if I do the same but bigger, I get a bigger curve. And if I do the same but just, sorry, let me move that around so it makes sense. If I do the same but just as one big corner, then it creates the largest kind of radius. Make sense? Okay, then let's wrap up this stream. Stay tuned for the announcement of the next one. I'm really glad that all of you were watching this. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like Citybound and you want to support the project, please consider giving me a small monthly donation on Patreon. patreon.com/citybound. You can choose any amount that you want, and even small amounts really help me. The money that I get so far is from, let's see how many, 122 patrons. So you see that, barring the one or other exception of people who donate a lot, most people just give a little, and all of that helps, and in the sum it really makes a big difference in freeing up my time for Citybound. Obviously the goal would be that I could do it full time, that I wouldn't have to worry about the day job or like consultancy gigs like I've been doing now. So yeah, I would be super happy to have you as a patron. Otherwise, I'm extremely happy to have you all as my viewers and avid fans, and I hope to see you in the next live stream today or in the following days. Take care, and well, Jesse, you will have to watch the stream to understand what's going on. See you very soon. Bye bye.